There comes a moment in every person's life when they must draw a line, not in the sand, but in the soul. A moment when they rise, not to fight the world, but to stop surrendering to it. That moment is not marked by noise, but by silence. Not with a shout, but with a pause. It is the moment you stop being available. Yes, I said it, stop being available. Not to the petty urgencies of the hour, not to the draining cries of the uncommitted, not to the emotional gamblers who bet with your energy and walk away when the pot runs dry. You were not born to be a servant of demand. You were not born to be a puppet of everyone else's chaos. You were born to command your mind, to guard your power, and to forge a destiny from within. The truth is bold and uncomfortable. As long as you are always reachable, you are always controllable. As long as you are always visible, you are always predictable. And as long as you are always reacting, you are never ruling. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. This is not detachment. This is direction. A man who cannot withdraw from the crowd will never rise above it. A woman who cannot retreat into her own mind will forever be molded by another's. That is not freedom. That is spiritual imprisonment with polite chains. And today we break them. You have been taught that availability is virtue, that saying yes is love, that showing up no matter how tired you are is nobility. But let me speak with the sharpness of reality. You are not a wellspring of infinite supply. Your energy is sacred currency, and the world is filled with thieves in fine clothing. Every time you respond to a message that insults your peace, you make a withdrawal from your soul's bank. Every time you smile while suffocating, you deposit resentment and collect spiritual debt. And every time you explain yourself to those who never tried to understand you, you gamble away your voice in exchange for silence that isn't even yours. Why? Why do you trade your fire for acceptance? Why do you sell your instincts for a seat at tables built on sand? It is not because you are weak. It is because you have forgotten your sovereignty. Silence is not absence. It is presence multiplied. It is the echo of your decision. It is the cathedral of your self-respect. In the early 1900s, there lived a man named Charles Proteus Steinmetz, called the Wizard of Schenectady, a genius of electricity, yet when he walked into a room, he often said nothing. Executives trembled, not because he yelled, but because they knew that behind his silence was the force to alter the direction of a nation's industry. He charged $10,000 for marking an X on a malfunctioning machine, not for the act itself, but for the decades of understanding behind it. That is what your silence must become, not void, but voltage, not retreat, but resistance, not passivity, but power. Withdraw strategically, speak selectively, move deliberately. There is no victory for the one who bleeds for every battle that isn't his. Let me ask you, who becomes nervous when you pause? Who demands an answer when you offer none? Who accuses you of changing the moment you stop being accessible? These are the ones who never wanted your truth, only your obedience. They loved you loud when your voice was convenient. They praised your kindness while extracting your essence. They wrapped manipulation in the lace of flattery, and you called it connection. But now the current shifts. You begin to see the patterns. The friend who only calls during crisis. The colleague who values your presence but never your purpose. The partner who cherishes your comfort but never your conviction. You begin to realize every time you answered quickly, you were praised. Every time you hesitated, they panicked. Every time you said no, you were labeled distant, difficult, or disloyal. But my friend, what is loyalty to those who drain you? What is kindness to those who feed on your silence? There is no virtue in abandonment of self. There is no honor in being always available if it comes at the cost of your own becoming. You are not here to be everyone's sanctuary. You are here to be the master of your own. There is a reason why the great minds of history valued solitude. Thomas Edison worked through the night alone, listening to the voice of invention. Helen Keller, though surrounded by silence, found a symphony of meaning inside her mind. Abraham Lincoln, in the height of war, often walked alone, not to escape, but to align. Why? Because the deepest truths are not shouted. They are whispered in solitude. And the person who cannot stand their own silence has no business demanding the world's attention. This is the paradox of strength. The more you withdraw, the more the world wonders. The less you explain, the more they imagine. The quieter your steps, the louder your presence becomes. You do not need to be loud to be heard. You do not need to be everywhere to be powerful. You only need to reclaim what has always been yours, your center. You see, the world does not collapse when you disappear. The only things that collapse are illusions, roles you were cast into, expectations you never agreed to, and relationships built not on who you are, but on what you give. And when those illusions crumble, so do the chains. That's when they call you selfish. That's when they say you've changed. Of course they say that because the person who used to say yes without thinking is gone. The version of you that bled quietly so others could shine no longer answers the door. They call it coldness, but it is clarity. They call it arrogance, but it is awakening. And here lies the divine irony. By stepping away from others, you finally step toward yourself. When a man begins to guard his energy, he is not closing himself to love. He is opening himself to truth. When a woman begins to say no without apology, she is not hardening, she is healing. The heart does not grow strong by being available to everyone. It grows strong by being loyal to itself. Let me speak to the ones who are tired of performing, tired of responding, tired of shrinking to keep the peace, tired of being the mirror for everyone else's projection. I say this with thunder. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your peace. You do not have to perform to deserve your own presence. You do not have to burn your soul to light a path for those who refuse to walk their own. There is an invisible theft happening every day, and the currency is your attention. They take it not by force, but by habit. Notifications, gossip, emotional blackmail, obligations dressed in politeness, all whispering the same lie, that your time is not yours, but your time is your throne, your attention is your kingdom, and your energy, that is the breath of your destiny. Every time you get dragged into meaningless conversations, you leak a drop of destiny. Every time you respond to provoke, you lose a spark of your potential. Every time you react instead of observe, you trade long-term vision for short-term validation. And I ask you, is it worth it? Because here is the brutal truth. What is always available becomes invisible. What is always ready becomes routine. What is always responsive becomes replaceable. The person who never says no becomes a tool, not a treasure. That's not love. That's leverage. And leverage is a game for the manipulator, not for the master. They fear your silence because it is unprogrammable. It cannot be predicted, cannot be pre-approved, cannot be puppeteered. And that silence becomes a mirror. It reflects back to them the noise they've been avoiding in their own lives. When you do not respond, they must confront their emptiness. When you do not explain, they are forced to question. And when you do not react, they must reckon with who they are without your energy to orbit around. You become no longer a player in their script, but a sovereign soul writing your own. And yes, this will cost you. It will cost you connections built on convenience. It will cost you the applause of the emotionally immature. It will cost you the fake warmth of those who only stayed because you made life easier for them. But what you lose in noise, you gain in knowing. What you lose in reaction, you gain in revelation. What you lose in availability, you gain in authenticity. You may walk alone for a while, that's true. And solitude will ache at first like a wound you can't reach. But slowly, that ache becomes a silence, and the silence becomes a sanctuary. And in that sanctuary, you will begin to hear a voice that the world tried to drown, your own. This is the place where vision begins. This is the place where resilience is forged. And in this sacred isolation, you will remember what it feels like to think your own thoughts, breathe your own rhythm, and follow your own flame. It is here that you separate the necessary from the noise. It is here that the fog clears and the mountain of your purpose begins to rise before you. You were not created to serve every call. You were not born to be a slave to circumstance. You were designed to rise like steel from the fire, not to please, not to pacify, but to build, to lead, to become. Let us speak now of the power of refusal. It is one of the greatest untapped forces in the universe. The power to say no is the power to define your life. It is not aggression. It is selection. It is not rejection. It is direction. The man who cannot say no has already sold his freedom. The woman who cannot say no has already lost her voice. And I tell you, the richest lives are not built on how many people they please, but on how many distractions they reject. So what does this mean in practice? It means you don't answer every message. It means you don't show up to every argument. It means you don't engage every invitation to chaos. And it means you don't respond to every cry that comes dressed in expectation. Because you are not obligated to trade your peace for anyone's validation. You are not required to explain your silence. Your absence is your message, and your boundaries are your banner, and your withdrawal is your awakening. Remember this, the greats were not made by noise, they were made by clarity. Andrew Carnegie didn't build an empire by being available to every whisper. He built by isolating what mattered and removing what didn't. Florence Nightingale didn't reshape the meaning of care by being accessible to every voice. She became a legend by listening to one voice, the voice of purpose. The Titan does not entertain every request. The Creator does not respond to every critic. Because the higher you climb, the quieter the path becomes, and in that quiet, you hear the blueprint of your destiny. Do not mistake movement for meaning. The masses are busy, but few are building. The multitudes are responsive, but few are responsible. This is the danger of the age, that you confuse reaction with relevance and performance with purpose. But the ones who rise, truly rise, do so not by chasing applause, but by withdrawing from the circus altogether. They walk through the noise untouched. They see the stage for what it is, a distraction, a place where people play roles they never chose, wearing masks they forgot how to remove. But not you, not anymore. You see it now. You see how the world feeds off your impulse, and you see how easily people command your energy when you leave your soul unguarded. You see how you were trained since childhood to fear rejection more than regret, to fear conflict more than confinement. And so you smiled when your heart cracked. You served when your spirit trembled. You gave when you were empty because you thought you had to. Because they told you that kindness was silence, that love was tolerance, that virtue was availability. But those were lies. Lies told to keep you soft, docile, predictable. And you are none of those things. Not anymore. Let me make something clear. To reclaim your energy, you must become dangerous again. Not in violence, but in stillness. And not in threat, but in discipline. Because there is nothing more dangerous to manipulators than a soul that no longer reacts. They expect your fear, offer none. They expect your panic, offer poise. They expect your emotional availability, offer clarity, and watch the world recoil. You will see it happen in real time. The moment you no longer play your part in their drama, the script falls apart and they call you distant because they can no longer reach you. They call you cold because they no longer control you. They call you selfish because you stopped sacrificing yourself at their altar of need. But listen carefully. It is not your job to bleed for those who refuse to heal. And it is not your calling to be a reservoir for the emotionally irresponsible. And it is not your fate to be the pillar in someone else's collapsing temple, especially when they keep setting fire to it. You want peace? It starts with refusal. Refusing to explain yourself to people who aren't listening. Refusing to justify your standards to people who benefit from your compromise. Refusing to stay in rooms where your spirit is suffocating for the sake of being nice. Let me give you a law, etched not in stone, but in your own dignity. The more accessible you are, the more disposable you become. The mind that is always open is a mind that never cultivates depth. The heart that is always available is a heart that never heals. Even the sun disappears each night, not because it is weak, but because the world needs darkness to reset. And so do you. You need silence, not just from others, but from yourself. From the voice inside that says, answer quickly, be helpful, don't make them wait, and don't make them uncomfortable. You know what's uncomfortable? Living your life at the mercy of everyone else's needs. You know what's painful? Pretending to be calm when you're collapsing. You know what's exhausting? Trying to hold up everyone else's sky when your own is falling. That is not selflessness. That is self-erasure. And it ends here. Look around at those who get irritated when you grow quiet. That irritation is not concern, it's exposure. They're not missing you. They're missing the role you played. They're not reaching for your heart. They're reaching for your utility. And when they realize you're no longer available on demand, they panic because your boundary disrupts their illusion and your stillness breaks their control. Your silence reveals their noise, and your absence echoes louder than your presence ever did. That is the power of transformation. You become not a ghost, but a mirror, and they are left to face what they refuse to see in themselves. And this is not cruelty. This is consequence. This is not revenge. This is realignment. And if it shakes them, let it. If it breaks the dynamic, let it. Because only what is built on truth will survive your rebirth. There is a kind of strength the world rarely understands. It is not the strength to fight. It is the strength to refrain. It is the discipline not to answer every insult. It is the resolve not to defend your name to those who will never speak it with honor. It is the wisdom to conserve your flame instead of lighting every dark room. True power is not the ability to be everywhere. It is the ability to disappear from the places where your soul is not valued. This is why discipline is not punishment. It is protection. It is not denial. It is direction. The disciplined mind does not chase every flash of attention. It walks by torchlight. It knows the path even when others mock its silence. This is the path of the rare, the misunderstood, the truly powerful, and not because they scream louder than the rest, but because they whisper when the world expects them to beg. Remember, you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be understood by yourself. You are not here to impress crowds. You are here to build legacies. And legacies are not built by being agreeable. They are built by being immovable. Let the world call you whatever it needs to survive your boundary. You call yourself free, call yourself whole, call yourself home. You have walked through the valley of reaction, and now you stand on the mountain of response. You have seen how they flinched at your silence, how they scattered at your stillness, how they recoiled when you chose not to dance to their tune. And now you know. You know that freedom does not come from approval. It comes from release. Release from the need to be liked. Release from the lie that love must be earned through exhaustion. Release from the chains of performance, of pretense, of placating those who only value what you offer, not who you are. And in that release rises the real you. Not the one shaped by every demand, not the one molded by every crisis, not the one trained to please in exchange for scraps of peace, but the one carved from clarity, forged in solitude, and reborn in the sacred fire of refusal. You are no longer available for manipulation, no longer accessible for guilt, no longer reachable by those who only knock when they are in need, because your spirit has evolved. And that evolution has a cost. You will be misunderstood. They will say you are heartless. They will accuse you of arrogance. They will label your peace as pride. Let them. You owe no one the explanation for the freedom you fought to taste. You don't have to translate your silence into their language. You don't have to decorate your distance with apologies. You don't have to dress your boundaries in softness just to keep others comfortable. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them wrestle with the mirror your absence has placed before them. Let them confront the reality that you no longer dance in their storms. Because this is not about them. It never was. It was always about the quiet rebellion taking place inside of you. The rebellion that said, I will no longer shrink, and I will no longer spill. I will no longer be the sacrifice that keeps everyone else warm. Now, what remains? What is left after the silence has swept away the noise? What stands when the old connections fall apart, when the roles dissolve, when the illusion collapses? You remain. And for the first time in years, that is enough. You begin to notice the strength in your spine again. You begin to hear the rhythm of your thoughts, uninterrupted. You begin to feel a strange new clarity, clean, piercing, undeniable. This is the birthplace of vision. Not the kind that is shaped by others' expectations, but the kind that rises from your soul like a dawn unannounced. You begin to ask different questions. Where am I truly going? What do I want to build? Who do I want to become? And most importantly, what am I no longer willing to give away? These are the questions that rebuild empires from ash. Let me remind you of something sacred. Greatness has never walked in crowds. The thinkers, the builders, the dreamers, they were often misunderstood, misjudged, mislabeled. because they dared to step back, because they dared to say no, because they dared to retreat, not out of fear, but for fortification. Beneath the noise of the world, they found blueprints that no one else could see. And while others danced for approval, they laid bricks for eternity. Their silence was not escape, it was engineering, and now, so is yours. You are no longer interested in being everything to everyone. You are interested in being something unforgettable to someone, and that someone must first be yourself. Because if you cannot honor your own time, no one else will. If you cannot protect your own energy, no one else will. If you cannot hold the line of your own peace, you will be recruited into the chaos of others. But not anymore. You have drawn the line. And on one side is your past. On the other is power, real power. The kind that no one can give you and no one can take away. The kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and where you're going. And the kind that makes you completely, unapologetically unavailable to anything that does not serve your calling. And yes, you will be alone for a time, but this solitude will not destroy you, it will define you. In that silence, you will finally hear the voice that has been buried under obligation and noise. In that stillness, you will remember that you are not a reflection of the world, you are the flame within it. And when you walk again into the public, into the noise, into the world, you will not be the same. You will not move with desperation. You will not speak with apology. You will not act with fear. You will carry yourself like a force, because that's what you've become. A force. Unshakable, unmoved, undeniably whole. They will feel it before you speak. They will notice it when you enter, and some will fall away. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your frequency now exposes theirs. You're no longer someone they can guilt into staying. You're no longer someone they can lean on irresponsibly. You're no longer someone they can manipulate with false affection or borrowed attention. Because now you choose. And every no you speak is an act of self-respect. Every silence you hold is an act of self-restoration. Every exit you make is an act of self-preservation. And every moment you say, I will not give my energy here, is an act of revolution. Let the world call you what it must. Let the old circles whisper. Let the ones who were never ready for your greatness call your boundaries a betrayal. They are not your audience anymore. You are no longer performing. You are building, becoming, belonging to yourself. And from this day forward, you do not explain, you do not justify, you do not apologize, you rise with poise, with clarity, and with conviction, because you finally understand you were never meant to be available to everyone. You were meant to be available only to what matters, to what aligns, to what fuels, to what honors the masterpiece being born inside you. So go ahead, withdraw, stand still, speak less, move with thunder, and let them wonder, what happened to you? And when they ask, say nothing, because the answer is already in your silence, and your silence, it roars.